Welcome to the Wayne Bennett Podcast, celebrating West Virginia's people, places, and the culture of Southern Appalachia. Now here's your host, Wayne Bennett.
Welcome to Wayne Bennett's Podcast. I'm your host, Wayne Bennett. This is episode 147. It's September the 3rd, a chilly morning in 2024. Our guest today has a lot of titles. She's the Marketing and Education Director at the Raleigh County Solid Waste Authority, and also she's a Beckley City Councilwoman. But I think the most respectable title, she's a public servant. And Sherrie Barbera Hunter, we're glad to have you.
Well, thank you. I'm very honored to be on your podcast, Wayne.
Well, thank you. And I know your dad, Quinn. They used to call him Quinto. And he was a bundle of energy himself. Do you think that's where you got some of your energy?
I know that people tell me all the time that Quinn lives. And what a compliment that I emulate to others what my dad was. And I'm honored by that. And he was just an amazing, to me, he was only 5'6", but in my eyes, he was a giant. He was a giant. The boys that he coached at St. Francis, he was a volunteer coach at St. Francis de Sales School for 25 years. And one of the Samala brothers came up to me and said, "Your dad, years ago, taught me life lessons." What a compliment to my dad that he was that kind of a guy to his coaches.
I actually had the opportunity to coach against him. I coached at Sophia Elementary back in the early 70s.
Yeah.
And he was, I think at that time, he might have been the 6th grade and the 8th grade coach at St. Francis.
Yes.
And he was always easy to get along with. But he was very active with the church.
Yes.
Was he one of the founders?
He was. He was one of the founders of St. Francis de Sales grade school back in the late 50s.
Wow.
In the late 50s. When you walk into and my dad didn't want any recognition or anything, but when you walk in the back door of St. Francis for all of these years, there's a plaque above the door in the boiler room, and it says Quinto Barbera.
Wow.
And all those kids, and it's important that those students know that those men had a vision of what that education could be, and it's still standing to this day.
Doing well.
Yeah.
And he boxed a little bit when he was growing up, and his brother Andy was
my uncle Andy was a Golden Gloves. Yep.
Yeah, and
they were.
He was, but your dad was interested in politics, and he was a stout Democrat.
He was a Democrat.
And he ran for sheriff.
He did run for sheriff when I was a little girl. I remember when John F. Kennedy came in the parking lot close to the Moose, at the Moose where it's down there on South Fayette Street. That Moose used to be there, and there was a big rally, and there was a picture somewhere of my dad and John F. Kennedy, who was running for president. But yeah, Daddy he was a Democrat, but more importantly, oh my word, he was a patriot, and he loved America. And you know, I'm the product of 4 immigrant grandparents. All 4 of my grandparents came over. My grandpa Barbera used to say we came over on the boat. On the boat. That's how they said it. So I should be a shepherd in Italy somewhere. So here I am, all 4 of my grandparents.
Well, your mother was a Misco.
Yes.
And didn't she come from McDowell County?
She came from, my grandfather came from Jenkins Jones, McDowell County. And when my grandpa Miserere, 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 came to America, he went to the Raleigh County Bank, and they said, we can't say your name. Can we change it to Misco? And my grandfather, Anthony Miserere, said, sure, you can change it to whatever you want. And so then it became Misco. But it's funny, the Misco girls married, Janet and Eloise Misco met Quinn and Andy Barbera. So the Misco girls married the Barbera brothers. So I have double first cousins.
And they live right beside each other.
Right beside each other on East Spring. And then the other Misco cousins are on the other side. And my grandfather bought all that property when he came to Raleigh County, and that's where we all live. And the homestead is my cousin Mark Misco still lives in the home, in his home. And then we did sell my mom's. And when
I graduated with Joe.
Oh, Buzzy Barbera, my cousin Joe Barbera.
Yeah.
1968.
1968.
Yeah.
He was on the wrestling team, and now your dad went to Mount Hope High School.
He
right?
did. He did.
I know he was
Mount Hope.
active in a lot of the reunions.
Yes.
Later, he was an MC at some of the ceremonies.
He was, Wayne, and he played football. He was also their drum major, so he would change into his drum major outfit during halftime and lead the band. I mean, he was an unbelievable trumpet player. My uncle Nunzio Barbera he's passed now, was a wonderful trumpet player, and I'm a trumpet player. I wanted to be a trumpet player like my dad. So I was a band student at Beckley Junior High and Woodrow.
Now, the Barbera that lived in Bradley, is that another uncle?
That's Uncle George. That's the interesting history that I think that you will scratch your head and say, I can't believe this. So my grandmother had my Uncle George Barbera, the oldest of 10 children, 6 boys and 4 girls. My Uncle George drove my grandmother, Iolanda Barbera, to Washington to talk to a congressman who was from Southern West Virginia. And she said, we need a post office. We need a post office. We need to write letters back home. And she spoke very broken English. And he said, all right, we'll name it Barberaville. She goes, it's not about Iolanda, it's about other people. He said, okay, all right, I'll invite General Omar Bradley. Bradley got a post office because my immigrant grandmother asked Congress to have a post office in Bradley. And then later on, my grandmother advocated for Beckley Water to take the water line so that Bradley could have water. So she was very instrumental. And it's funny because I'm her granddaughter and I follow suit. I learned public service from my dad. He went to Buffalo Creek, helped with the flood. I remember going with him to help with taking things to help with the flood. And so I know that, guess what, Wayne? We are our DNA. I am so my father and so my grandmother. It's really unbelievable.
Bradley was named after Omar Bradley. I'm sure.
Which the congressman invited to, and said they were going to name it Barberaville. And my grandmother said, it's not about me. It's about the people. Oh. And he said, okay. I have a friend, Omar Bradley. We'll name the town after General Omar Bradley. And that's how Bradley got its name and its post office. Oh. From my grandmother advocating for that.
Well, I remember George lived in a brick house down there on the left. My dad and I did a little work for him when I was in the construction and built on the old Mount Hope bypass. He had a filling station.
Yes.
And we built an apartment.
You towed him. Yes.
And he was a heck of a businessman.
Uncle George, and this is true. He was the first when they had Burgerland over there across the street. He was the first business that had the twist vanilla chocolate cone in West Virginia. Wow! So Uncle George went from Barbera Insurance Agency. He was Mutual of Omaha is what he sold, and then he had that business. Yeah, Burgerland was there for quite a while. And then he had Utotem, which was the convenience store across the street. And that brick house in Bradley, my cousin, Amy Barbera, she still owns that house. It's still in the family.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now and George, who is the cross-country coach at Woodrow, who's his grandson.
Yes.
And, now let's talk about you. Well, your mother, now was she a stay-at-home mother? Or?
My mother was a stay-at-home mom. She helped with my grandmama and grandpa Misco. It's really funny. My mother and father lived in Bradley, and in 1950, 4 years before I was born, my big sister Barbara Barbara, and my mom and dad moved in with my mom, grandmom, and grandpop on East Prince Street. That's where the home place was. And so it's really funny. I think that this is an interesting thing. The man that bought my mother's house called me in 2018 and said, I found something up in the attic. You're going to come and get it. And it was a steel metal box with my grandma Misko's naturalization papers and all of the things, the ship she was on, the date. My uncle Frank was the oldest of the Misko kids, and he found that underneath a floorboard in the attic. This metal, my mother never knew about this. There's a picture of my grandmother taken at the, it's crazy. But yes, my mother was a stay-at-home mother. She kept the home fires burning while my dad coached and did the things that he did. Yeah.
Well, now you have your sister Barbara, who's married to Rob Rappold.
Yes.
Now she's a nurse.
She was a registered nurse. Yeah, she was a NICU nurse. Yes.
And she would, one of our granddaughters had some issues when she was first born, and your sister took care of her, and it was remarkable.
NICU, my sister could start an IV on a gnat. I mean, the skill set of those nurses is unbelievable. And my baby sister, the Barbera girls were 7 and 8 years apart. So our baby sister is 62. And so we have Woodrow graduates from Barbara in 65, me in 72, Carol in 1980. So mother and daddy had 3 only daughters, 7 and 8 years apart.
Like starting another family.
It is, yeah.
When you were younger, I don't know whether your dad or your mom, but you were involved in some beauty contests and some talent contests, and you danced and you pantomimed, sang, and did different play. Of course, you learned to play the trumpet later.
I did, Daddy. I would go everywhere, and there would be people. I remember that I danced at the old memorial building and did things, and that was Brenda Lee, and I pantomimed when I was like in 2nd, 3rd, 4th grade. And then when I was a little girl, 5, I was the runner-up to Little Miss West Virginia. I was just a little tiny thing. But that was kind of cool to do that. Yeah.
So when you got to junior high, you were a cheerleader, you were in the band.
Yes.
You were on the homecoming court.
I was.
And
on the prom court. On the prom court at Woodrow. Prom court at Woodrow.
At Woodrow, but weren't you in homecoming at Becca?
At Becca Junior High.
Yeah, okay. Yes. And Woodrow, you were on the prom court. You were in the band. You were broadcasting club, conservation club, science club, future teachers of America. Yeah. Had you ever thought about being a teacher?
It's really funny. I was more of a broadcasting, advertising, that type of thing. It's funny. I feel as if I'm a teacher with what I do with the Raleigh County Solid Waste Authority. But it's funny. It's full circle. There I was in the conservation club at Woodrow. I was in the broadcasting club. We used to make announcements at the school. They would allow us to go into the office and make the daily announcements with our other students. But that was a really special. I had 3 wonderful years at Woodrow Wilson, and the band and Alan Staten and our band members. Wayne, it was a very special time. I came to school in the 10th grade, and my upperclassman, Steve Canterbury, was at school, and he came with I said, why do you have a gas mask on? He said, it's Earth Day. The first Earth Day ever was when I was in the 10th grade in 1970. I will never forget that. And now I promote Earth Day, which is April 22nd of every year.
Now, was Jerry Moomaw
Jerry Moomaw was our conservation.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he did a great
he was
job.
Wonderful.
And one thing you were pretty active in was the what they called a Medical Explorer Club.
Yes.
And you kind of went to hospitals too, or?
We did. We would watch and see. Those of us that thought that maybe we would go into the medical field, that was a new club that they had back then. I don't think that they have that anymore. But that was a great club. But I'll tell you, the things that we did in the conservation club, those students are still doing that now. Now they have the West Virginia DEP has the Youth Environmental Program, which I think was on the cusp of doing that type of thing back in when we had the conservation club. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Now do you still play the trumpet?
I do play the trumpet.
Oh, really? Or do you go to the alumni band?
Well, let me tell you, in 1992 and 1993, we had a huge Woodrow Wilson alumni band. And that was, we'd only been out of school 20 years. There's going to be another one coming up, but I thought about maybe being in the New River Jazz Band. I'm a pretty decent trumpet player. And I still have, and I play my dad's horn, which kind of makes it special. Yeah.
What kind of music did you listen to in high school?
I loved the Supremes, and of course I loved the Four Tops, and I loved the Temptations.
Motown
I loved Barry
girl.
White. I was very much a Motown girl. But then it's funny because and Mother and Daddy did not mind. We would play music on our turntable, and my mom and Dad just loved music. But sometimes we would put on old albums, a big band, and Benny Goodman and my uncle Pat Misko helped, and he lived with us for a while to help my mother take care of Grandpa Misko. And we listened to classical music all the time from my uncle. I have his collection of records. Yeah.
Oh, you had to like Frankie Valli and Sherrie Baby. So.
You know what? Frankie Valli and the Four Seasons, my cousin was a hairdresser in Pennsylvania. And one of the Four Seasons came to my Aunt Conjetta's, or my cousin Frankie was a hairdresser. And one of the Four Seasons when we were visiting came to visit in the very, very beginning of the Four Seasons. It wasn't Frankie Valli, but it was one of the Four Seasons. I don't know which one, but he came to get his hair cut. And I was a little girl, well, maybe 9 or 10. And my Aunt Conjetta, who was married to my Uncle Frank, my mother's oldest brother, she said, "That's one of the Four Seasons." I went, okay. And so, but now I realized that was a big deal, that he was coming to have his hair cut before they went on tour.
Now you, after high school, you had all those interests in high school. After high school, you became a lab tech, didn't you?
I was a pharmacy tech for a while, and then I also worked for a podiatrist for a while, and I did x-ray, so I was kind of involved. I was at Raleigh General as a pharmacy tech, and I thought, we had back in the day, you would take the crash cart when there was a code, and you would take the cart, and you'd have to dispense the medicine to the doctor that was administering to the person that was having a medical emergency. And Wayne, I knew then that oh my, it was very fast paced, and I knew that I needed to switch gears. I was too emotional to see someone pass. That was difficult for me. Yeah. So then I ventured into after going to Beckley College. I worked in retail for a little bit, but then I was a stay-at-home mom for a long, long time. My husband David, was a retired UPS man now. But then it's one of those things that I had a lovely career, and I ended up being the sales trainer. I was one of 12 corporate trainers for Thompson newspapers, and they would fly us everywhere to Toronto. My training partner was from the Globe and Mail. And she and I would go to places and train the advertising staff on print advertising. Wow. So my last 3 years at the Register Herald, I did that. But then in 2001, right after 9/11, I actually went to the Raleigh County Solid Waste Authority to cover a story and do an advertisement. And the director of recycling said, creating a new position, director of education. I said, oh, that's interesting. And so the process went along, and it was shortly after 9/11 that Mr. Bill Patton offered me the job of director of education for the Raleigh County Solid Waste
Which
Authority.
you would be the first.
I'm the first. It was just really my task was to create a school recycling program, but at the same time educate about how the landfill operates. And I will tell you, it has been the most incredible. On October 8th, I will start my 23rd year.
Let's go back one second.
Okay. All right.
Let's go back to David Hunter.
David Hunter, yeah.
David, you have 2 children.
2 daughters.
Leslie and Lori. And grandchildren.
5 grandchildren.
Dave.
And a great-grandchild.
Oh, wow.
I know.
Dave, I played a little softball with Dave with Dots Paquette, which
Yes.
I guess you would call that softball. He has supported you and worked with you in all the projects that you've had. And I mean, when you've run for office, he's your chief campaigner. I mean, I've seen him out. The guy's phenomenal. I mean,
He is my mother, when I met David, I'll tell you, my mother and daddy always said, if you find a guy who adores his mother, not only does David adore his mother, my mother-in-law's 95, adores his mother, but he adores his 3 sisters. And it was just something that, David's a graduate of Greenbrier West. I'm a graduate of Woodrow Wilson. And it's funny, but we met. He was my UPS man, but I didn't know his name. And so he would wave and wave. And so anyway, I got home from I worked for Jack Fairchild for a little bit of time. Anyway, I got home from work and my mother said, call David Hunter. And I said, I don't know who David Hunter is. She said, well, there's that number, call him. And so 3 weeks later, I saw David in traffic and he blew the horn and I waved to him and he said, thanks for calling me. And I said, are you David Hunter? He went, mm-hmm. And so I got home that night and I said, Mother, do you still have that number? And she said, well, you're still 25. I said, I can't call boy. I'm 20. She went, Sherrie. And so anyway, I called him. And so he took me to lunch the next day. And 6 months later, we were married.
Oh, wow.
And we'll have our 45th wedding anniversary in February. And he has been my rock. Wayne Bennett, I cannot tell you what a jewel of a man. He's a gem. He really is. He's just he worked 25 years as a UPS man. He was able to retire in 25 and out. You could do that back then. Mm-hmm. Now they have 30 and out. But he has been an advocate and held my hand. And he's I rely upon David a lot. I just pass a lot of things to him and what do you think? And so,
well, he likes to volunteer too.
He does.
I mean, you guys were involved with, I guess, when you were back in the newspaper, but the BNI golf tournament, which was huge, and you guys ran that thing.
He did. He ran that, and then the last year was in, I believe, 2019, and they honored David and Sherrie Hunter for all the years, but. David was that BNI golf director. He worked actually at Beckley newspaper and advertising, just delivering and stuff. Once you're a UPS driver, you just drive all the time. Yeah. And so that was a part-time job for him. But then he took over doing the BNI for many years. That was some special moments in time we won't forget.
But now you had you were on a committee for the Theater West Virginia as early as 1990 or whatever. But you ever thought about being an actor or acting or getting in?
It's funny. I was in the thespian troupe 754 at Woodrow Wilson. Linda Zorio, God rest her soul, was our sponsor. And I was a more behind the scenes person, kind of making sure that everybody was here and there. And I thought about that, but I'm more of it's funny. I could do a presentation about things, but as far as being an actor, I'll leave that up to them.
But some of the things that you were involved with, and this is just a Max Toy Fun. I mean, now it's not as on the job type. It's a little different, which I think you had to go there.
We had to go there, yes.
Yeah.
It's funny, when I was at the newspaper, Dan Page was the editor at the time, and Dorothy Lucas, God rest her soul, she was a wonderful treasure of the Toy Fund. And 3 officers, Don Dayton, Don with Register Herald, Pete Tirico, and myself. I'm still the treasurer. And I will tell you that Dan Page said, will you be the treasurer for Max Toy Fund? And I'd been going to the parties, but to be able to be right there and do that was really special. But because of COVID, we had to change the way we operate. Now, we still have Max Toy Fund, but we do grants to nonprofits that are vetted nonprofits, and they do their application through Beckley Area Foundation. And as officers, we canvass and see what those nonprofits want, and then from there we disperse and grant them grants for the things that they do for children. Yeah.
Now, you also were a chairperson for the United Way fundraising, and that's a job.
In 2013, I was so proud. It was the year that I turned 60, and on my birthday, on my 60th birthday, and I was Frank Wood's vice chair. Brad Eckley was my vice chair when I was the campaign chair, and Wayne, we had to hit $850,000. That was a big chunk of change. And Southern West Virginia, people are just the philanthropic things that kids and people do. I mean, it positively affects 7 counties in Southern West Virginia. And we hit that goal. And it was so special. That's this year's goal as well. So yeah, that was very, very special indeed. That was when Morgan
that's
and
still
O'Neill.
a lot of money.
That is, yes.
And you've been involved in as a PTO president. You've been certain types of walks, arthritis walk. You started the day of prayer. What year did that?
That was in 2011, and that's funny because my mom was in declining health, and me and my 2 sisters, we were taking turns, and that's so sweet that you would mention that. I was listening to NPR radio, and they were talking about the day of prayer, and you read the whole Bible, and it takes 95 hours or something to read the whole Bible, and I walk into and I'm really emotional. I'm thinking, gosh, we're in the Bible Belt. We should be. So I walked in to see my mom, and I was going to spend the night with her, and she said, "Good golly, you're all emotional, and you're in worse shape than me, and I had dialysis today. What's wrong?" I said, "Mother, the day of prayer. It's the first Thursday in May every year. It was established by Congress, and we don't do anything here." And she went, "Sherrie, honest to goodness." I went, "Mother." She went, "Aren't you Quinn Barbera's daughter?" And I said, I am. She said, "If it touched your heart so much, why don't you start the day of prayer in Beckley?" I said, "Mother, will you help me?" And so we stayed up until 3 a.m. determining how we were going to do that. We cut the day up into 15-minute segments. I asked Mayor Emmett Pugh the next day, can we read at Word Park? And we have been doing that ever since 2011 with about 40 different churches that come.
That's great. That's great.
Yeah.
And now, speaking of churches, you've also been involved in raising some money for the renovation of the New Salem Church in Tams.
Yes.
Now, the New Salem Church that I know where that church is. The one I know of is over in Abraham. There's a New Salem Church too.
Okay.
But it is not in as much need as the one at Tams.
Well, and it's so unbelievable how that transpired and how my dad is really attached to everything that I do. So at work one day, Fred Lovell was our plant supervisor, Pastor Fred Lovell. He's a pastor at Sprague Free Will Baptist. And he comes to me and says, in 2011, he goes, "Sherrie, New Salem Baptist Church needs a new roof." And I said, "Okay." He said, "It was built in 1921 and it needs a new roof." And Donald Cook worked at the recycling center, and he was their preacher. I said, "Okay." So I started writing letters. I called Susan Landis, and thank goodness we got a $2,500. If we raised $2,500, we would get 2,500. So we started doing this campaign. The Register Herald did a beautiful thing. We won a historic New Salem Baptist Church. So I'll fast forward. We were able to get a new roof in 2013.
Do they have church there now?
Occasionally there are services. There's a candlelight service, there's an Easter service, and then we're going to have a fall service. So, and we have the help of Pastor Paul Chapman and Pastor Lynn Halstead. So, long story short, the church was named to the National Register of Historic Places in 2023. And then the National Trust designated it this past May as the 11th most endangered church buildings in the nation. And so we will be able to get more grants for preserving historic churches, preserving Black churches. And so the thing about it that I found out, that my daddy was the milkman for Tams, West Virginia. He was the milkman for Queenie Schofield, who was the oldest living member of New Salem Baptist Church. My daddy was her milkman. And so I'm thinking that I know my dad's in heaven. I remember Daddy loving the people at Tams. I mean, think about it, Wayne. Those people drank my dad's milk and helped be able to sustain our family. And my mother stayed in the home taking care of us. So, yeah.
Your dad passed away at 65, didn't he?
He did, with a smile on his face.
Really?
Honest to goodness. Yeah. A month earlier, we had been in the Oval Office of the White House. President George Herbert Walker Bush, Barbara Bush actually, invited my dad to the White House. They'd called. They wanted my Uncle Andy to be in the inaugural parade when George H.W. Bush, my Uncle Andy was in World War II with President Bush. He was his gunner.
I remember seeing a picture in the newspaper, you guys.
Yes, in the Oval Office. Yeah. And so we were able to, and a month later, my dad died in his sleep. I will be forever grateful to Tim Berry, who was a Beckley police officer at the time. So when my dad passed, Mother called. It was 1 a.m. I get to the house, and it looked like my dad was just sleeping. And ironically, when my grandmother Barbera, my grandma Barbera, Iolanda Barbera, was 58, she died in her sleep in Italy. I remember my daddy crying. I was only 4 years old. I remember my dad boo-hooing. And my dad used to be the milkman for Robert C. Byrd when he was the butcher in Sofia. And Senator Byrd was a young senator, a junior senator, and he had to help get my grandma Barbera's body back to America.
Oh.
Yeah.
Now, another thing that you've been involved with was you and Ron Hedrick helped set up the warming stations,
yes,
which is an issue with homeless people in the city, around the area. Yes. And when it gets cold, a lot of them don't have a place to go.
That's true. And I felt that with Ron Hedrick and what a gem he is, and Trina Dasel, we mirrored our warming center exactly what Margaret Ann O'Neill and the United Way does there. And so a couple years we were in the Soldiers and Sailors building, and then Pastor Betsy Evans at the Beckley Community United Methodist Church said, you can have this, our fellowship, you can use our fellowship hall. And so we've been able to do that. And it's from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. And, we just don't want anybody to freeze to death in Beckley. I mean, we understand that there are issues, but at the same time, Wayne, we are our brother's keeper. We're our brother's keeper. And anything that we can do to help sustain them, I think that's our due diligence.
Well, you're also involved in food distribution. And
yes.
I remember one time you had mentioned as sort of a role model, Florine Warden.
She was wonderful. Yes, that is so true. I remember Florine Warden. Lou Warden was our feature twirler at Woodrow. Oh my gosh, she was amazing feature twirler. And Florine Warden was on her hands and knees planting flowering cabbage in the triangle there at Rural Acres, where you go up to Maxwell Hill and Rural Acres. She wanted that area to be beautiful. And at the time, she had a really good association with the Division of Highways, and they gave her a lot of help. Well, things evolve and everything, but she was a trailblazer. Florine Warden wanted our community clean and green, and so she was a special lady.
Florine was the kind of person, I was on a couple projects with her, and she was the type of person, if you're on the same team with her, you couldn't find a better helper. And
that's so true.
If she was against you, you had your hands full. Because I remember in a couple political situations, Bill Wooten was in the legislature at that time, and he voted yes on some kind of bill she didn't like, and she actually had a picket sign in front of his house. But she was a character, and she did a lot of good. Now, when you got to working in 2001 for the marketing and education director at the Raleigh County Solid Waste Authority, here comes that future teacher of America thing and all that. But a couple of things, as you said, is trash is the one thing we all have in common, which that's we do. Some of us don't know how to distribute it or get rid of it correctly. I can, for the life of me, and we don't have as much problem in Raleigh County, but I cannot imagine people hauling tires and roll them into the river. Why do you roll tires into rivers or streams? I mean, even if you're going to get rid of them illegally, just set one down on the side of the road, make it easier.
Thousands of tires are in rivers and creeks, and it's unbelievable. And thank goodness for Sam Stoneacre and PPOD, which is Pollution Prevention Open Dumping, that there are all kinds of collections all over. They one of the first big tire, I'll never forget this. We were going into an area. A citizen told, this is what happened. The citizen told their pharmacist. The pharmacist told the state senator. The state senator called the Solid Waste Authority. And from that conversation, hundreds of tires were removed, and we went down to western Raleigh County, and there were tandem after tandem after tandem of dump trucks. And they had a track excavator operated by Sam Stoneacre, the DEP, plucking these tires out of the creek. I mean, hundreds and hundreds. And so I know it's just, it makes sure you understand.
But what you're doing with the education side of it, and I've seen school buses come in and kids are tickled to death with get to make the tour. You guys over at the landfill, you guys have practice fields for sports teams, and that's, people don't realize it's hard to find a place to practice.
Our board members, our board of directors are so forward thinking. They took an area, and when they were doing cell construction, they realized and recognized that students did not have practice fields. And so they opened Wooten Park in 2019. It's named in honor of our longtime board chair, John D. Wooten. So 4 practice fields: baseball, softball, youth football, and soccer. Occasionally, WVU Tech baseball team would come over and practice. Actually, the first day that we opened there, they were. But it's an unbelievable thing. The walking track.
You gotta try.
Yeah, there's 3.5 laps as a mile. It's open sunrise to sunset. Teams have a 2-hour window to practice. They just have to reserve. But any other time, the general public can go and use it. Last fall, they opened a big toy, and it's in honor of our longtime consulting engineer, Charlie Gillen, who passed. And that is named in honor of Charlie, and this big, huge toy at the very end of the field. And so now we have picnic tables that are around the circumference, thanks to a grant from Carter Family Foundation. So it's a wonderful area.
Well, you said also today's trash is tomorrow's treasures.
That's true. One of the things that I said a long time ago, last year we had 1,161 students tour 5 different counties. The farthest school was Lakeside Elementary in Putnam County. But I like to say, learning to safeguard the environment at an early age, it cultivates a lifelong appreciation of where you are and what you do, and to be mindful of trash and recycling. Mr. Patton always said, it all starts at the scale house, and that's true. The Waymasters are unbelievable. You have to know about special waste, what kind of, what it's going to be, what type of material. So it's just, trash is unbelievable. And it's a common denominator. We all have that in common.
What happened to the idea of the golf course?
We did, well, because we were going to do that. But then they thought, that's not, they were going to have it lit at night. Well, in 2017, they opened the New River Clean Energy Plant, which is a plant that cost $5 million from investors from Cox Communications. They came to the Solid Waste Authority and said, we want to have, 2 generators. We want to harness that methane gas. And there are 1,900 families in Raleigh County in this area that get their electricity from the Raleigh County, from the New River Clean Energy Plant. When Woodrow Wilson High School turns their lights on, in West Virginia, you can't sell the electricity. You have to put it on the grid, on the main. And so when Woodrow turns their lights on, it could be generated from right there at the New River Clean Energy Plant.
That's great.
1,900 families.
Wow.
Yeah.
You've been described as the Energizer Bunny, and some people have said who have worked with you said, if you want to get something done, you call Sherrie, and they even named Sherrie Sweep after you.
They did.
And I've seen you personally. I've seen you out on the road picking up trash.
Yeah.
Do they still have that annually?
We have. Well, they switched. I will tell you when they wanted to do a Sherrie Sweep, and that was, I think, Ellen Taylor, who was at the Chamber of Commerce, and I was had a really bad accident 19 years ago. And to honor me in my position as Raleigh County Make It Shine's chair, they implemented Sherrie Sweep where people would pick up trash. And at one time, there were 2,000 volunteers that would be around picking up litter. We had litter grabbers and safety vests. Make It Shine still has litter sweeps. We don't call them Sherrie Sweep anymore. But everybody, there were a lot of people, and they did that for several years. Yeah, that was special.
Well, somewhere around that time, you had an accident with gasoline, didn't you?
It was an operating room fire, and it was an out-of-state hospital.
Oh.
And the oxygen exploded on my face.
Oh.
And that's where, I was in a coma for 4 days. My face was completely burned, and it was an out-of-state hospital, I want to say, and that was and that's when they did this to honor me, to have a Sherrie Sweep. It was the flame stopped right at the back of my throat. It was a bad situation. I've had, Wayne, Mr. Patton, when I came back to work, I was really scarred and marred and looked terrible. And Mr. Patton said, we just need you to come back to work. I was out for 2 months. And he said, but listen, you educate about how a landfill operates and how we have to protect the integrity of the groundwater. You can also educate about what happened to you. And because I had never smoked in my life, they were able to do reconstructive surgery on my face. So for the people that come to see me that aren't, I don't share this with little children because children have to be put to sleep for tonsils or whatever. But for other people, I say, listen, because I never picked up that habit of smoking, I was able to have reconstructive surgeries on my face. So not only do I promote recycling, my face is recycled, and I kind of use humor with David to talk about that because you see me, I have to put things. I can't feel my nose, I can't feel my lips, and I don't want my accident doesn't define me. It just makes me want to love life more and live to the fullest, because I don't say why me. I say why not me. Let me be an advocate for change so that doesn't happen to anybody else.
How did you get involved with city politics?
Well, at the end of 2015, people were advocating for me to run for office. And I thought, I had no expectations. I mean, I don't have an agenda. I just want to do what's right for the community. Margaret Ann O'Neill, I loved her. She's a wonderful woman. And we would say, I want to do things for the greater good. And so the first time I ran for council at large, there were 5 candidates. I'm thinking, oh my word, 5, and they only picked 2. So I was elected with Tim Berry. And then, so I'm starting on my 3rd 4-year term. So I ran again in 2020, and I was successful. And so now you're councilwoman at large, for one of the 2 council people at large for the city of Beckley.
Unopposed, you ran this last time.
I did.
That shows a lot of respect for you.
I'll tell you, I was honored, and I thought to myself that does validate that people know that I'm listening to their concerns and things. We don't always have to reinvent the wheel. We can see if something's happening in a municipality that's working well for them. Well, then why can't we replicate that? We'll do it here, dust it off. That's what we did with the warming station. The warming center. We replicated what was going on, and Charleston said, okay, work with the United Way. We can do that here too.
Well, everybody, I don't live in the city now, but I was raised in the city, and everybody has concerns, and to each citizen, their concern is the most important, even if it's a speed bump on a road or fill up a hole with a little asphalt. Right. But just my opinion now, if I had to pick the 3 most important things for you as a council person and the council and the new mayor, 1 was get a city manager, which is happening. 2 is would be get the Pinecrest property over to the state or over to the county as soon as you can to make sure the money's still there. 3 would be the image of Beckley. I mean, that would be homelessness, that would be panhandling, that would be a little bit of everything. And I mean, the city of Beckley will never be like it was back in the 50s or 60s downtown, because you have malls and those kind of things now. Yeah. But we need some more foot traffic. We need legitimate businesses. There's too many empty buildings.
There are some interesting things that are coming to council that have been able to be successful, Trina, regarding panhandling and the things that other cities been able to do. I listened to Mayor Tom Joyce, the mayor of Parkersburg, who has implemented a program where 2 retired police officers are the liaison for people that are transient. Why are you here? Is there anything we can do? Do you need a medical card? And they have been able to really help Wood County. And so we're hoping that by implementing some of those things that others have done, that we'll be able to up our image a little bit. Yeah.
Now, you were kind of in a precarious situation as a city councilwoman, and your brother-in-law was a mayor. Did it ever get personal? It
did. But at the end of the day, Rob knows that I love him and he loves me. But when I took my oath of office, I said I'm an independent thinker. And sometimes I didn't always agree. I didn't agree, but I wasn't there to be a rubber stamp for the mayor. I was there to represent my constituents, and I believe I've done that to the best of my ability. And sometimes it could be a little interesting, but we work through that.
Now, what's on your bucket list?
It's funny. I would love to go to where my grandparents came from. My grandmother, Misco, Miserere. They're Northern Italian. My dad is Sicilian. I would like to go to Italy, but I think about going on a boat and going on that plane and being over that ocean I got to get that out of my image. I've always wanted to go to Alaska. I want to go to the Puget Sound. There's a man that stands on his balcony. He always wanted to be in the Army, and he wasn't able to because he had polio. And on the Puget Sound, he stands on his deck at sunset and plays taps every night. And I want to witness that. I don't, as far as a bucket list, I can't really say that there are a lot of things that I've lived such a full and wonderful life, but I would. And there's also a football field that's on the edge of Alaska that has turf, and I would like to get to that football field. I saw a story about that. That the kid, I know it seems I'm not a football player and I don't have boys that are football, but I would like to see that, and I want to see that man playing his trumpet, and I would like to go to Italy at some point.
How would you like to be remembered? What kind of legacy would you?
Oh my! I just want. I guess that I want us to be kinder and gentler. I want us to be mindful of. I want people to know the importance of recycling. I mean, really, I think that's I've been doing this for 23 years now, and I think the legacy of reduce, reuse, recycle, and I want the earth to be I want it to be a better place than it was the day before. And oftentimes when children, the most unbelievable compliment for people that don't know me, that come to the landfill and they look at me straight in the eye and they go, oh, this place is a destination. You have the park. You have a recycling center. You have a recycling museum. You grow vegetables and we give them to the Commission on Aging. You have the Last Chance Mercantile. We have the New River Clean Energy Plant. So it's unbelievable. So I give you and Diane a cordial invitation to come and take a tour and see exactly what happens at the Raleigh County Solid Waste. So I'm honored to be, Mr. Patton said I'm the voice of the landfill, and I'm honored to be the voice of the landfill.
Well, I'm living this close. I'm probably more familiar with the landfill than a lot of people, but I haven't been to the museum, and I would like to see some of the other things. So I'm going to take you up on that sometime.
I want you to. We have some tours coming up. We already have a tour booked for Earth Day, 2025.
You mentioned that the first Earth Day you were involved with. I was at Beckley College, and I was part of a program. I actually made a challenge to Bluefield State from Beckley College about, I don't even know what it was now, but
that is so cool.
It was interesting. Yeah. John Saunders was the president of Beckley College at that time, and when I first started getting a group together, he thought we were a bunch of radicals, and he called me in the office. And back then, you didn't get called into a college office, and he wanted to know what was going on. And I explained to him, and he said, "Oh, okay, that's fine." Yeah, but, there is a quote about you. Said Sherrie is passionate about our community, and she instills that passion in all of us. And I think your life's performance and testimony is a great deal, and I really I appreciate you coming and talking to us, and
thank you.
I'd like to get you back because I know we got some other family stories we can talk about.
We do. I think that one of the things that if I would close this way, it's funny that during the Depression, my grandma Barbera had a bakery in Mount Hope. And when my dad would get off school at Mount Hope High School, he would help. The brothers were at war. My daddy was helping give out bread on the at the dock, whatever Grandma Barbera's bread had left over. And so now it's funny that now I'm helping with Mountaineer Food Bank, and my dad helped back there. The similarities between the two of us is just unbelievable. But anyway, I'm honored for you to ask me to be on your podcast. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you, and we'll get you back, and we're going to come and visit you.
Please do. I promise you won't be sorry.
Anyone else who'd like to be on our podcast, you can come and see me at awbennett50@gmail.com. And remember, if you're not dead yet, you're not done yet. This is Wayne Bennett, and God bless you.